This series has allowed me to reflect on what may be missing in our approach to protecting land and water in Iowa, and what we may need to do differently to make the progress Iowans deserve. This is Professor Neil Hamilton from the Drake University Agricultural Law Center with today's Our Water, Our Land. My answer to that question of what may be missing may surprise you. My conclusion is our approach is missing a purpose, why we're doing it, why it's in Iowa's best interest to protect our water and our land. For example, if you read the nutrient reduction strategy, one of the first things that might strike you is how soulless it is. There's no discussion of why we need to protect water quality or the values we'll gain from doing so. Instead, it appears the only reason that we have the nutrient reduction strategy is because the EPA made us do it. But that's not a good enough reason to act. By not focusing on the reasons why we should protect our water, it makes it too easy for some to resist acting, believing that it's somehow being imposed on us. We often take a reductionist approach when protecting natural resources by focusing on the numbers. How much nutrients are we losing, and whether or not a particular practice will pay for itself. But doing so may mean we're missing the larger point, the reason why we're acting, the human reasons. Why not do it because it's the right thing, the moral thing to do, to not pollute a stream, or drain a wetland, or plow a hillside? What about considering the human enjoyment of a clean stream, an open space, or the ability to see wildlife and nature, as well as the need to preserve and conserve the fertility of our soil? We seem to be afraid to ask anything of our farmers and our landowners and our citizens when it comes to protecting Iowa's natural world. But yet we know many farmers and landowners are already taking the steps to protect these resources, but they could use our support and our encouragement. We know our citizens stand ready to fund these efforts, as they showed in 2010 when over 63% of them voted to amend our Constitution so that the next sales tax increase is dedicated to natural resource protection. So what are we afraid of? That someone will say, no, I don't want to protect my soil or water, or that you can't make me do it, or that it's not an appropriate role for the state to protect our water and our land? Well, Iowa's already answered all three of these questions through court cases and legislation. Or is it because we're afraid that someone won't be able to make a buck? Aldo Leopold told us years ago that economics alone are never going to be a sufficient basis for a sense of stewardship, nor should we expect it to be. Do you count up the tally sheet before you decide whether or not you love your children? Are we only patriots to our country because it may make us some money? Of course not. Some of our most powerful human relations and emotions can't be reduced to just dollars and cents, and the same should be true when it comes to protecting the soil and water that sustains our future. To conclude, let me share what I believe are the common elements that we need for a foundation for moving forward. As we saw in last week's episode on restoring Lake Darling, some of these elements will sound familiar. First, we need a sense of urgency, a shared understanding of our need to act. Second, we need a vision for what we're trying to do. This vision will help provide us with a strategy to prioritize our decisions and to focus our efforts. Third, we need ways to measure our progress so we can be sure that our actions are working and that our investments are wise. Fourth, we need community support, be it in a region, a watershed, or of a state citizenry, so that we know that there's a support for these actions. Fifth, we need adequate funding from both public and private sources. The funding that Iowa dedicates to water quality protection is inadequate, yet we can't even be honest with ourselves about the little we do spend. Sixth, we need cooperation from farmers and landowners working in the watershed and at the local level. Individual actions will be important, but we'll need widespread action to move the needle. We need to engage our institutions, the soil and water conservation districts, the drainage districts, and the watershed management authorities so they can bring to bear their organizational capacity. Finally, To develop the support and strategy, to obtain the funding, and to inspire action, we need leadership. People willing to invest their time and reputations, and willing to confront the dogma and inertia we may need to overcome. Next week, we'll look at what the speakers at our Soil 2018 conference had to say, and the vision that they helped provide for the future of our land and water. This has been Professor Neil Hamilton from the Drake University Agricultural Law Center with today's Our Water, Our Land.